Hi, welcome back to Deep Images. If you're joining us for the first time, we are the channel to watch to see the wildest talk on film on the interwebs. We cover everything, man, and we cover it from our own unique perspectives. So, the topic we have chosen for our current series is samurai films. They're Japanese films, and they're also known as chambara, correctly, actually, which means like sword fighting films, and they're a subgenre of Jirigiki, which is I'll say it right eventually, which is period dramas, historical, dramas in Japan. And the Japanese filmmakers of the 20th century really made hundreds of movies celebrating, well, not always celebrating, depicting the Tokugawa shogunate, which lasted for a few hundred years, where the military, the guys, the shogun ruled Japan. And then the Meiji era began, and then the emperor took over and went crazy. But anything from the shogunate era all the way down to the end of the Meiji period in 1913 is ripe for us to cover on samurai films. Um, and after that, the samurai kind of didn't exist. Some of them kind of metamorphosed into the yakuza. Um, So today we're going to do one that is an absolute classic, and it's going to be a couple of names that few names that you guys are already familiar with from us, if not elsewhere. Uh, but it's really hard not to begin a series like a primer on a certain subject without these people's work. Um, so before we go on, I'm Henry Covert. This is my co-host Chuck C.F. Roberts, and some other co-host Justin Cotton, and he is going to present a wonderful film to you.
Okay, thanks, Henry. Well, the film I'm doing this time is The Hidden Fortress. It's a 1958 black and white film, again, Kurosawa directed. Um, I believe it's set in perhaps around the late 17th century, around the same time as The Seven Samurai. And the reason I say that is towards the end of this movie, there's muskets used, so there's guns used towards the end of the film. So suggests to me it's more 18th, 17th or 18th century. I'll go with late 17th century. The film was released in 1958, and it was at that point I've read it was the highest grossing Kurosawa film.
Hmm.
And as you continue to watch this film, by about halfway through, you can see a clear impression it must have left on George Lucas because
Yeah.
the original 1977 Star Wars seems to borrow themes and plot lines from The Hidden Fortress. Um, so loosely, just to begin with, it centers on two peasants who are fairly comical sort of characters. They're very self-absorbed and greedy type characters, but they're best friends. These two peasants, and the storyline focuses on them as they help to escort a man and a woman across enemy lines in this 18th, 17th century Japan. They're reimbursed with payment in gold. But what they don't realize is that the man they're traveling with, the strange man who they meet sort of half an hour into the film, sort of fearsome type man, is actually a general of a defeated clan. A woman keeps appearing nearby. He takes him to a fortress in the hill, which is effectively the hidden fortress,
Hmm.
um, where they have to sort of clamber up the side of this hill with all this rocks and shingle flowing down the hill.
I love
Um,
those
and
shots.
it's great.
I
So
do.
there's lots of shots of the rural Japan that we know and love,
And it's got still in the black and white era of
and
Kurosawa.
it's in black and white. Yep,
That's to me his best stuff, but it's just me.
so in black and white phase, and it's got the epic 1950s style musical score as well, which
Mm.
really helps. And the gold that these two peasants have found near a riverbank, which is a gold that belongs clearly to this defeated clan called the Akazuki clan, because it's engraved with their insignia. But this strange man they meet in the wilderness, uh, and he takes them to this hidden fortress where there's more of this gold to be found.
Mm.
But they don't know his identity. He's actually a general from the defeated clan, and the woman who keeps appearing nearby is actually a princess of this defeated clan, the Akazuki. Um, they don't guess this because at the start of the film, they're in a township where there's a signpost is put up um, to say that this woman, this princess of the Akazuki clan, defeated clan, has been beheaded. She's been executed.
Mm,
As it turns out, she hadn't been executed at all, and it was actually her sister who was a double who had
mm.
self-sacrificed and had been executed uh, so that the real princess could survive.
A different
So
Padawan. Sorry.
yeah, yeah. So you can see the influence on the original 1977 Star Wars because if you can see the Akazuki clan as maybe the Rebel Alliance, who are now effectively in hiding or they're on the run, so to speak, and setting up camp in unknown locations.
Hmm.
And the victorious clan at the start of the film, the warlike one, is the Yamana clan, who have their own territory to the south.
Hmm.
They could be seen as the evil empire.
Hmm.
And then there's a neutral state to the west called Hayakawa, which is friendlier territory for the Akazuki. And this is a destination where the group is trying to travel to. So um, the disguised samurai and the disguised princess team up with the two peasants, Tahai and Matashichi, and they're trying to travel to this neutral territory of Hayakawa. And they decide, or it's actually the peasants' idea, they decide that the best way is to go into the territory of the Yamana, because that's the last thing that the Yamana clan would expect them to do, is to travel into their own territory, rather than travel between the borders of the two warring, well, between Akazuki and Hayakawa, because it's so heavily fortified. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
so for the part of this journey, the princess is to pretend to be a deaf mute as part of her disguise. And they then start their journey. So a bit like, I suppose, Lord of the Rings, many years later than this film, there's a lot of focus on travel and journey, a bit like in Fellowship of the Ring. Although
Yeah.
they don't seem to cover a lot of territory like they did in the Lord of the Rings, but it helps to
They did a lot of
showcase.
walking in Lord of the Rings, man.
It's a lot of walking and yeah, eating stuff. But the thing is, it showcases the natural environment, the panoramic Japanese scenes as well, just like in say Seven Samurai.
Did great
Um,
locations, shots.
the self-interested and greedy peasants, Tahei and Matashichi, tend to get them in trouble occasionally. They lose their horses, which are the horses are needed to help carry the gold. There's also a scene where they are discovered by Yamana soldiers, and so the disguised samurai, which is Roku Rota, his name's Roku Rota, and Princess Yuki. They're the names of the two key characters. So Roku Rota is actually a general in disguise. So he has to fight off the Yamana soldiers. There's a good scene where he chases down some Yamana soldiers on horseback, um, and kills them and chases them into this camp, this uh, this camp that's run by the Yamana clan. He then encounters another general who's one of his rivals, but they seem to have a bit of a friendship as well, even though they're from rival factions. And they lament the fact that they weren't able to meet each other in battle because they're from warring clans, right?
Right.
But the rival commanding officer's name's Tadu Koro, and he says, "Well, let's make up for it now, and we'll have a duel, just man to man duel." And they do that with these big long spears. So it's a lance duel, okay? And so that's one of my memorable scenes from the film. And this lance duel, as opposed to a sword duel, continues, probably takes up at least 5 minutes of the film. But at the end of it, the good guy, Rokurota, comes out on top. He manages to sort of snap the spear, the long spear that's borne by his rival. But he then literally doesn't kill him, doesn't spare he spares his life and steals a horse and leaves. But of course, Tadokoro, who's the defeated general, has been showing up in front of his men and feels great shame. Um, and The movie moves on. There's a scene where the two peasants come up with the idea to hide the gold because by this stage it's word's gotten out that these fugitives from the defeated Akazuki clan are on horseback, man and a woman with two peasants. Well, there's three men and a woman, and it's believed they have a lot of the Akazuki gold on them.
Yeah.
And so it becomes harder and harder to get to where they're going because they have to go through enemy lines. So the two peasants decide when they see a lot of the townsfolk from the Yamana clan moving with these wagons with firewood, they say, "Oh, they're taking the firewood because they're having a fire festival,
Hmm.
and maybe we'll just take our horses, which are laden with gold and covered in firewood as well, and just join their procession for this fire festival, and that way we'll be able to get through unseen."
Right.
So it doesn't quite work out that way. They end up in this village, and they're acting suspiciously because they don't want to put the firewood on the fire. So they end up having to throw all their gold in on the fire amidst their firewood. And then there's a bit of a ritual chant, a ritual dance, and a chanting going on. And the chant is about the emptiness and pettiness of life. And it's quite a good scene where all the villagers are doing this song and dance ritual as part of the fire festival.
Wow.
Um, and it sort of speaks, I suppose, to the mindset of those living under the yoke of the Yamana clan.
Hmm.
Um, Actually, prior to this, the scene a little bit prior to this was when they take on another companion, which is a younger woman, peasant woman, because they're at an inn drinking. The sake is mentioned, I think, in this context, but they're in a inn at an inn in the territory of the Yamana clan, and they're buying and selling women inside this inn. And I think at one point someone wanted to buy the princess who's pretending to be a deaf mute, and
Hmm.
instead they buy this other peasant woman. And the princess then later says quietly to Rokurota, "I don't like what you did back then. You basically allowed this woman to be bought by these peasants at the inn just to try and divert them from me. So I want you to go and buy her back." So Rokurota, who's the central character in the film, played by the way Toshiro Mifune, who's a regular as we've said in these Kurosawa films. So they buy this young peasant woman, and she becomes part of their fellowship. Um, and partway through, she works out when she sees a sign and hears some villagers talking that, in fact, the two people leading their group is actually the princess and the general from the Akazuki clan, and that there's a reward out for them. But she doesn't say anything. She doesn't turn them in or anything. She seems to be a bit fearful of the Rokurota, but also quite protective of the Princess Yuki. Um, so not long after the fire festival, the group's on the run once more with the Yamana clan on their soldiers on their tail. Um, and you see the greediness and sort of selfishness of the peasants. They're comic relief in the film, but they're also symbolic of some of the greediness and pettiness that exists in the society at the time. And
Hmm.
they come up with an idea to betray their companions, which is Princess Yuki and Rokurota, although obviously the peasants don't really know their true identities. And they say, well, if we go to the border, we don't have any of the gold on us ourselves. We can just slip by unnoticed, but we might be able to get some sort of reward if we turn in the others. But by the time they actually get to the border and try to effect that plan, they're laughed at by the Yamana soldiers because they say, "Oh, well, you're too late. We've already captured those people on the border trying to cross the border.
Hmm.
They're already prisoners. So we suggest you just go and drink up and forget about it." Um, so the two peasants just sort of you see them wandering through the gates looking disconsolate because they've having to wander on, empty-handed. Because right from the start of the film, they're kind of destitute peasants and they're just
Hmm.
trying to get from A to B, but try and get some money or gold as part of the journey. Um, so the next scene is you see Princess Yuki and Rokurota and also the peasant woman, and they're tied up in this effectively a dungeon with the Yamana clan. Um, the general Tadokoro shows up again, who had the duel with the main character, sort of 2/3 of the way through the film. So he shows up again and in a menacing sort of posture, and he's got a massive scar on his face, like a burn scar almost.
Hmm.
Um, and Rokuroto says, "Well, what happened? I didn't do that to you. How did you end up with this massive scar? Tell me the story." And eventually he does reveal the story. He said, "Well, my shame was such after I was defeated by you in the duel. You should never have spared my life, because what you thought was a kindness is actually was not a kindness at all, because my overlord then wreaked revenge on me for the dishonor of losing the battle, and I was beaten within an inch of my life and ended up with a scar."
Hmm.
Um, so, and then the princess talks about, "Well, don't see it that way. That's the wrong way to look at it. Um, if this is the way you're treated by your overlord, then obviously your retainer is bad in the first place." Um, this is what she actually says, and then she cites the words of the ritual chant at the fire festival
Hmm.
about the emptiness of life and its superficialness, and that seems to have some effect on Tadukaro, because in the next scene, as the princess and the general are being led towards what seems to be their execution,
Oh, no.
Tadukaro suddenly creates a disturbance, scares off the horses that are carrying the gold, and fights off many of the soldiers, thereby releasing Princess Yuki and Rokurota. And so he's then becomes an ally effectively. So I was thinking throughout the film that Tadukaro, especially when he shows up at the near the end with the big scar on his face, is almost like emblematic of Darth Vader,
Yeah.
almost like a Darth Vader character. Although, as we know from Star Wars, Darth Vader never becomes good in the first Star Wars film, but later
Right.
on, as you get to End of Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi,
And
he
he's got,
becomes
yeah.
he becomes less evil, and starts to find, particularly just before he dies, his true self once more. So I thought Tadukaro could possibly, because he's not the head of the empire, but he's effectively the viceroy of the empire. He's almost in a Darth Vader type guise.
Hmm.
Um, so again, I guess another similarity with the original Star Wars film.
Well, there's also
Um,
that scarred face. I mean, because that dovetails into what I've read that George Lucas was heavily influenced by Doctor Doom, the Marvel Comics character, to have a guy with a scar face and wearing that mask, to,
mm,
for what it's worth.
okay, all right. So we then go back to our peasants who have basically in the wilderness. By this stage, they've also crossed over into the neutral state of Hayakawa, but they're then the good fortune is they see the horses go, the five horses, or maybe three or four horses, go flying past, jingling in a jingling sort of tone. So they're carrying gold on their backs, these horses. So they think that all their Christmases have come at once, because here's the horses with the gold.
Right.
But just as they're trying to sort out the gold between them, they start to fight amongst themselves, because although they've just been talking about what great friends they are, and whatever happens, at least we've got each other as friends and we should continue to be friends. As soon as the horses with the gold shows up, they start to fight over it and who gets what. And, one says, "Oh, but you said it was going to be split 50-50." And the other one says, "No, no, it's all for me. For yeah, I've done more than you have," sort of thing. But then some soldiers from the Hayakawa territory show up and basically arrest them and take them into captivity. And they're brought before this big dais temple with this grand woman sitting at the back, and this man dressed in this elaborate samurai armor, and they're sitting there with their heads bowed as prisoners, effectively. And then when they look up and they hear the princess talking, they suddenly realize that the princess talking is actually their companion throughout the film, and she reveals herself as a princess of the Akazuki clan, and she says, this man here, the strange man that you didn't trust throughout the film, is actually a general of the clan, and it's Rokurota. And so
Hmm.
they're suddenly amazed that these people they thought were just commoners that they were traveling with, they didn't trust, are actually people of high esteem and high standing from this clan.
Yeah.
And they and so Princess Yuki says, "Well, we're going to show charity to you, although you haven't shown much charity to us, and none of us is taking this gold. There's a lot of gold, but um, Rokurota's not taking it. Even I, as the princess, cannot take it because it's needed to re-establish the Akazuki clan. So no one or two people has a claim on it. It's for the entire clan."
Hmm.
She said, "But nevertheless, we'll allow you to go on your way, and we'll give you one piece of gold, one large piece of gold, like a rod between the two of you, and we want you to share it between you and no fighting." And so they say, thank you so much," and they're allowed to leave on their way from this fortress. And as they're walking off, one of them takes out the rod of gold and says, "Here, you can have this. I don't need it." And the other one says, "No, no, it's yours. You take it." And so they've suddenly become, right at the end of the film, more selfless, if you like, and less selfish.
Yeah.
Right at the end, and then that closes off the film. So yeah, I thought it was a really enjoyable film.
Good.
Still, my favorite film is Kurosawa's Seven Samurai, but I thought this was a pretty good film in its own right. I can see the similarities with the original Star Wars, which was nice.
Hmm.
Um, Particularly like the traveling aspect in the natural world, as I often do with Kurosawa films, and the black and white goes so well with the landscape. Cinematography is amazing.
Hmm.
Um, and for a 1958 film, you can't really go wrong with it. Its runtime was quite lengthy, not as lengthy as it's longer than Rashomon, but not as long as Seven Samurai. So it was about 2 hours 20, I think it was.
Okay.
Um, I'm not quite sure where it's available to view, but I'm sure it can be obtainable.
It might
um,
pop up on the Criterion channel sometimes. I mean,
yeah.
it's on Blu-ray through. No, wait, did they? Yeah, the Hidden Fortress is on Blu-ray through Criterion and DVD for those people living in the 20th century. But, but
I
yeah,
don't know if you've seen it recently, Henry, or Chuck, if you've seen it, but it's certainly worth a look.
I used to own it
I
on
think I'm
DVD, but I haven't upgraded. I sold it, but I haven't upgraded it, so it's been a little while.
This is one of those that I've never seen. I've seen I've heard of it. I've seen a lot of things about it. I hear it's great, but I haven't seen it.
It has a great feel to it because it's kind of epic, but it's also kind of comedic.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Most of us.
the two peasants are C-3PO and R2-D2,
Ah.
Yep, you're
and they're
right.
seeking the princess, who is Princess Leia Organa. The general is Han Solo. There isn't a Skywalker character,
Mhm.
thank God.
Yeah, because I was thinking. Yeah, well, I was thinking the general. He doesn't really seem like Luke Skywalker,
Mm.
and I was thinking he's got to be Han Solo.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah.
Princess Yuki is just a clear link parallel with Princess Leia.
And really, the
Um,
princess to me is like the star. I mean, I know Mifune's the big star, but if you look at the way the movie's even marketed now, her image is always the main thing. It's like her story. What's her mystery? What's the whole thing? I forgot. Do you remember the name of that actress?
no, I don't. The name that resonates with me is Toshiro Mifune, who obviously plays the general. Um, there also a cameo from in the Seven Samurai, the leader of the Seven Samurai, that actor who often appears in Kurosawa films. He was about halfway through the film, and
Yeah.
they had a meeting sort of in a cave where they talk about this plan to adopt the peasants' plan to travel via Yamana territory into the neutral territory, and that the princess would go as a deaf mute. So when they discuss that plan, that character is present. The older character, he's looking a bit older by now because it's 1958. This film, but yeah, you see him pop up and also in obviously Rashomon, and he's the main character, central character, really in Seven Samurai.
Princess Yuki is played by Misa Uhara, and this is her most notable role by far, it said, and then she retired from acting. Well, there you go.
One thing I would say is C-3PO and R2-D2 weren't as self-interested and greedy as the two peasants, but they are comedic like the two peasants.
Yeah, they are.
Absolutely
Well, C-3PO was as incompetent.
incompetent and paranoid type characters. Yeah,
I mean, R2D2.
particularly
Yeah,
C3PO.
R2D2 is the smartest. He's
Yeah.
the smartest character in the whole franchise, and he's the only character who's been in every single one of the movies, and he's the best actor. Really, his performances are much better than like Hayden Christensen or I know it sounds like I'm joking, but I'm actually not joking. R2D2, you can always count on him to be there and to hit his marks and do something cool in the story. But some of these other characters, I don't know.
Yeah,
But
once C3PO started like, lobbying for his own trailer and stuff, it's
yeah,
just
three PO's led like really.
one of those bowls full of green M&Ms.
He's got a lot of ego problems, but
Yeah. I
um,
liked his accent. His accent reminded me of Tony Blair.
yeah, oh
Yeah, I
God,
can see that.
it's Anthony Daniels. Yeah, he did reprise C3PO in The Rise of Skywalker. I understand. I don't remember. He was not in the first two of that new trilogy, and I didn't miss him. Uh, but R2D2 is right there, man. R2D2 is now helping steer the ship of the character played by Oscar Isaacs. I forgot his character's name, but he's kind of the hero. Well, the hero of the new trilogy, though. The hero really is Ren, the female who becomes the Jedi. But
Mhm.
Was
anyway,
that Adam Driver?
huh?
Who's Oscar? Was that Adam
Adam
Driver?
Driver is the son of Han Solo and Princess Leia, who kind of becomes like Darth Vader, and he becomes evil. But at the very last minute, he's kind of redeemed, and there's kind of like an attraction between him and Ren.
Yeah.
I didn't care for Rise of Skywalker. I got through the first 20 minutes. A week
I
later,
couldn't get into the more recent Star Wars
I
films.
tried to get into. Yeah, I watched
Yeah.
it again. I I thought The Force Awakens was fine. I thought it was way better than the Lucas ones, the prequels.
That one was passable.
But
Yeah.
I personally, controversial opinion, I love The Last Jedi. That's the only Star Wars
I
movie.
actually did too.
That's
Um,
the only one I love.
and I really dragged my heels on seeing it, but I had to see it because of all the controversy. And
Yeah,
I
it's
thought,
it's
okay,
worth.
that's my favorite. It's just
Yep.
like, I mean, throughout the entire span of the series, I was never a big fan of Luke Skywalker. I always thought he was kind of
Right.
this milk toast kid,
Yeah,
grouchy,
it is.
grouchy old reclusive Luke Skywalker. Who becomes like the big samurai character, the big action hero, or whatever. It was like that's my Luke. Everyone was just like, not my Luke. That's my Luke.
Yeah, it's really funny because they gave Luke the best character development in the whole series. But
Yeah,
not only did a lot of the fan, if not most of the fan bros hate it, but Mark Hamill himself went out in interview after interview saying how much he hated it. And I'm like,
yeah.
dude, you got paid a lot of money for that. Shut up. You did it. And great. But anyway, so we're gonna wrap up another samurai episode. So be with us next week or next whenever, and we'll be back. And we love you guys. And these guys over here wanted to also chime in with some things we wanted to remind you of.
Well, thanks so much for watching. I hope you got something out of it and enjoyed it. But please remember to subscribe, like, and feel free to leave a comment whether you agree with us or disagree with us or just want to add something, some third party opinion. Please do so and leave a comment. And
It'll
thanks
be
so
like
much for
it'll be
watching.
like it'll be like, okay, Covert, okay, Roberts, Last Jedi's trash.
That's okay. That's okay. And
That's
you're
quite all right.
welcome to disagree with us.
No worries.
Get down there in the comments, start a fight. Let's have some fun.
There you go. Y'all have a great evening. Okay. Thank you for watching. Hi, welcome back to Deep Images. If this is your first time with the show, welcome to the show. This is like the wildest film talk on the interwebs. So we are going to continue our amazing series on samurai films, otherwise known as Chanbara films, which is a subgenre of GD Gike, which is like I know I'm not saying it right, which is a period drama. So the GD Gike were all, it could be dramas, but within them, there were samurai films because they also were period pieces. So we've been covering some of the big ones and some of the lesser known ones, and I have them with me, co-host CF Roberts, co-host Justin Cotton, live from Australia, and I've got the amazing Briggy Williams, aka Funky Lollipop, and she has a movie for us in this genre.
Yep. I'm gonna take it away. What do you say?
Go for it. You go,
Thanks.
you go, girl.
I was like waiting for you to like bounce it back to me. Anyway, so the movie tonight is called Lady Shazin and the Drenched Swallow. And when I first encountered this movie, I was not too sure if I would really like it. I didn't know where it was going, but I have to say that it was really enjoyable. Um, just off the top, if you enjoy swordplay, but we are talking about samurai, so of course you have to like swordplay if you're watching this episode, but of course you do. So this movie takes place in a small village, as most of these movies do, for the most part. And what makes it interesting is that this is a female samurai um, in a time where there were not female samurais, and she is basically the heroine of the story, avenging her family's death, but also in a very backhanded way, stumbles into the people who destroyed her family while helping a maiden that's being run down by the Yakuza. So that's an interesting way that it just opens up onto that. And then she, of course, rips them apart with this sword, this very ancient, sought after sword. And they don't believe that she's able to, of course, fight these men who are brilliant swordsman, but she basically tears them apart. And
Is
while
this
saving this, Mhm.
is this before or after what happens to her?
No, no, no. This is the opening. This is how it opens.
So she's
Uh,
already. So can you describe, her disabilities?
yeah, 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 yeah. Yes, yes, definitely. Yes, that's sort of like I don't know. I'm kind of like a bury the lead type person,
I didn't
so
know
I'm
if
like
that was
sort of.
coming or not because I haven't watched it all the way through. So
Oh, okay, okay. No, no worries. I got it. So yeah, so as um, Harry was saying, the heroine of the story, she's got, well, more or less a disability. I mean, she wasn't really born that way. She was
attack.
attacked as a child. And she was attacked as a child. Her family was attacked and murdered, and by this sort of ruthless overlord of the village, and cut off one of her arms and gouged her eye out. So, as a little girl, she
On
was
the same
taken
side of
in.
her body.
Right, yes. So this, as a little girl, she was taken in by a family who was like a foster family. She was taught the way of the sword, and now she's got this sword that was sort of gifted to her, and this sword is like a part of her. And now she's an adult woman, and I believe she is looking for vengeance in a way. The way the story sort of plays out, unknowingly, she now will go into she goes to save a maiden who's being attacked by the Yakuza, and because of her so-called disability, they don't believe that she even has the wherewithal to even protect herself because she's got one eye and she's got one arm, but she she basically tears them open. Um, but yeah, I mean, well, yeah, she does. She does tear them open. So Now, after she does this, they go back, whoever's left goes back and tells like the overlord of the town, who was really a corrupt politician, what has happened. He was completely offended and couldn't believe that this this woman was able to do this to his most fearsome, fighting force. And so he sends more men out to track her down and to kill her. But while they're doing that, the young maiden that she was protecting, they befriended each other. And come to find out that this young maiden was also um, the brother, the the brother of, I'm sorry, somebody is trying to call me, the brother of, they were brother and sister. And this young maiden then was not really promised to, but one of the lords and one of the religious figures saw her, and they had conspired then to try to kidnap her and, deflower her more or less. And so the story kind of surrounds this corrupt politician and also the corrupt, um, for lack of a better word, like a Buddhist priest, I'll put it that way. And he says, well, I want to take her in. I want to teach her. I want her to be, show my other ladies how to be a proper lady. But the scheme all along was just to kidnap her and to deflower her. So this goes kind of back and forth. So she decides she's going to go. And now um, this is Lady Senzin. She decides that she's going to take down the entire operation using her sword and also the brother of this kidnapped young maiden. And together they go in, they take down the Yakuza, and they wind up, well, she winds up killing this Buddhist priest who was really, I call him a shadow healer. He wasn't really like a Buddhist priest at all. He was just somebody there who was just using people to gain status and to control people through religious means, and made sure that basically the whole town was like under his thumb, using, pretty much like today. I hate to say that, but
He
it's
was
pretty
he was,
much
he was what Bob Dylan called a Judas priest, which that term became popular after that.
which basically was basically the same thing. Um, what else happens in this story other than the well, oh, here's the thing. This sword, this priest wanted, or Buddhist priest wanted this sword. The sword had a lot of history to it. It had great value to it. And because of it being this very sharp, amazing weapon, he decided this is why he wanted to also kill the heroine of the movie, because he wanted to possess this sword. And also she wasn't, because they were unable to get it from her, no matter who got close to her, she wound up killing them, and this infuriated him even more. So there was like a little hint of like, this woman will never, she won't take me down. Like, who is she to be able to kill all of my, most fearsome
How dare
warriors?
she?
So, but in the end, she was able to, of course, get the maiden, save her virtue, which was a very big theme in those movies, certainly. And yeah, and then that was it. Well, she was going to give up the sword, and she was encouraged to give up the sword, and she decided that she's not going to do that. That the sword is her only friend, and so it kind of reminded me a little bit of sort of like a, not really a spaghetti western, but in a way it did, because it was just like one person who was a loner, and then she walks off into the sunset. Her, and it's not her horse, but she certainly had a sword, and going off into the sunset to, vanquish, other wrongdoers.
Of course,
So
yeah.
that was, yeah, so that was, but the swordplay was very intense. I liked the choreography was really, really good. And some of the music, I thought was a little unconventional for the setting
Was it
of the movie.
anachronistic?
It was kind of it was yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. Yes,
Sometimes that's
definitely.
fun though when that it's a little
hmm
jarring, but
hmm But it worked. It really worked really well. So it was enjoyable. It was like about an hour and maybe an hour and a half long, but dialogue was really, short to the point, but a lot of action. Um and I could think that's it.
may I ask you,
No.
if you didn't, that's absolutely fine. Did
What's
you
that?
did you happen to research the origins of how this movie was written?
How it was written?
Why it was
No,
written? Yeah.
oh, why? No, 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 I didn't do that. But what I did find out was that this movie was originally with a male lead,
Yeah.
and then they've adapted it to a female lead. So,
Is it Sazan Tonga or Tonga
so
Sazan?
yeah, Tongans, yes, yes. So
And
that I
not
did
only
find
that,
out.
that character had been made and remade all the way back to the 1930s. And
Oh, I didn't know that.
he was considered
Huh.
before there was really this kind of samurai cinema. We
hmm
came to know, I mean, not we weren't alive, but the Kurosawa, Kobayashi area that we're covering, like 50s, 60s. Um, there was this kind of primitive samurai movies, and they weren't very violent, and there weren't very many of them. And I've found a few of them that were kind of weird. But then you had someone like Mizoguchi who did 47 Ronin. So that's like at 1941 while the World War was going on. He made this movie, this 4-hour movie, the 47 Ronin, which, was a legend with some truth to it. And it's one of the most incredible samurai movies ever, but there's hardly any action in it. I mean,
hmm
it's really drama and intrigue, and I highly recommend it. I've watched it 3 times, at least 3 times. That's 12 hours of my life. Jesus. And it's been remade poorly many times. But so before that, there was these serials and serialized ones, and one Tonga Sazan was one, and there was this one actor, I can't remember his name, but it said he became this huge like matinee author for playing this unconventional weird swordsman character. And they did remake it over the years. Eventually, they did modernize, not modernize that as in set in the present day, but they, you know, the 60s, became more violent, more, more adult, in color, more well made. And that was not long before this version was made. And then
hmm
they still continued. And in 1982, they did a TV miniseries, which I do have on my Tubi watch list, called Tonga Sazen and and something something. But in that one, our man Tatsuya Nakadai played him finally, so he got his chance. And the most well known movie about this character was called Tonga Sazen and the $1 Million Rio. And that was made 1935, and it was a gigantic hit in China. And I mean in Japan, sorry. And there was a remake of it in the late 60s with one of the actors who started playing the character, but it didn't get as popular as the original, though it did get somewhat popular. But I think at this point they were like, we're going to try a lot of different things, because by the end of the 60s, Chinese action cinema was filled with female action stars by the mid 60s. So Japan, they had to get on the ball, man. So they had the Crimson Bat, who was a blind female swordswoman who had her own 3 movies, which are I've seen a couple of them. They're great. I thought about reviewing one, but in the future. And then of course they end up with Lady Snowblood, the iconic revenge movie, and its spin-offs. I covered while you were gone, Ricky, I covered a movie called Sex and Fury, and it was it was a late Meiji period, 1905 set, like end of the samurai, twilight of the samurai era, and stars Reiko Ike as a character called Osho Inochka, and she is kind of a Lady Snowblood homage ripoff, but a lot more sexual and a lot more sleazy, but a lot of fun. So, and then several other samurai female characters started popping up all over the place. Uh,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
I thought I was researching Tonga Sazin because I was thinking about doing the Nakadai one, and then I'd seen the Million Rio pop a while back, and then I was like, hmm, I want to cover one of these, but then I was like, oh, I don't know, this other one's a mini series, and then I was like, oh wait, there's the female one, and I was like, I'm gonna see if Briggy wants to watch. I don't know how I get these
Yeah, I
ideas.
mean, yeah, I did. I was like, okay, I'm gonna see, I'm gonna try it, I'm gonna see. I mean, I was sort of more familiar with, of course, the um, Saturday afternoon sort of Shaolin Wushu, movies that they used to that they used to play like on Saturday
Right,
afternoons.
the Chinese swordplay movies that were badly dubbed
Hmm.
back then.
Oh, but that was the most amazing part. That was the part that, at least for me, I loved the bad dubbing.
Did
It
you
just
know that
added something.
Did you know that almost all of those movies now?
I'm sorry?
Did, did you know that almost all of those movies now, through these boutique labels, have been digitally fully restored eh, in the
Oh.
original language with subtitles and optional English tracks? And
Mm,
Arrow has put out 3 box sets. They're literally gigantic, called Shaw
mm,
Scope, because Shaw Studios was the biggest that made
mhm,
them. And I just got the third one in the mail. That was my Santa's early present for me. I was really I
mhm,
have the first two, and they're like this wide, like this
mhm.
tall, and they're like this thick. And
Ah,
basically have like between 14 to 18 discs, Blu-rays, and a couple of the soundtrack discs, and just a bunch of movies, tons of booklets. And it's amazing
mhm,
because I went through the first two of them and I was like, God damn. Then I went through the first one again. It was
mhm,
like immersion in a culture and a time and the way they did their art. And I just love that stuff. It is
mhm.
just so amazing, and
Yeah.
people not see because of those ones, the Saturday morning ones we saw, people have dismissed those movies. But now they're seeing that actually most of them were very well crafted and really beautifully shot and had some intriguing stories and some fantastic action, obviously. But
Mhm.
that's a plug for Shawscope 3. I don't work for Arrow. Just throwing it out there. Do you have any final
It's
thoughts,
okay.
Bree?
It's okay. Just to say that there's a sequel to this movie.
Oh, I
There's a
forgot that.
sequel. So yeah, there's a sequel to it. Which if I had more time, believe me, I would have watched it. But there is a sequel, so I do plan on watching that. And then at some point in time, when we do another samurai series on this fine channel, then we will. Then I would
I
love to bring it.
believe I believe in 1995 we've got enough of a brain trust going finally on this topic. So
Mhm.
probably in 1995 we'll do a part 3. So
Yeah, yeah. Sure.
definitely want to throw in you guys and Bill Mulligan because he knows a lot. So
Mhm.
this is great. So you got anything else to say to the audience? I know you love to talk to our wonderful viewers. I hope.
Are you talking to Brittany? Are you talking
I'm
to me?
talking to Briggy. Yes, you can't
I'm
tell, but
talking
I'm
to
looking at
everyone.
Briggy.
Oh, okay. Well, I would like to say subscribe and don't be shy. And if you like to smash a button.
Smash that
Smash that
like
button.
button.
Do like this. Mm.
Hit that
Smash
notification
that
bell.
like button, ring that bell.
And, yeah, and please subscribe to the channel. We just got 2 new subscribers today, and I know this sounds
Oh.
bad. I mean,
Woohoo.
pathetic, but I was like so excited.
Better than nothing.
No,
It's
that
always
means that
nice when new
people,
folks come on. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
got on.
I
We
would
got.
rather have, or
What'd you say?
I was going to say, I'd rather have organic followers than fake followers. I'd rather have people who are genuinely interested in what we're saying and what we're bringing, as opposed to, how people buy followers or they just try to be
Mm.
gimmicky and,
I'm
thirst
not. I
trap
do
and
trade subscription. I do trade with other film and media related, but I know all the guys in my DM. I don't just casually do it. I'm like they're like
right. Hmm.
they'll be like, "Hey, do you want to look at my channel and I'll subscribe if
Hmm.
you do mine." So look at their channel and I think they're halfway decent, even if it's something like almost gaming related that I don't know much about, but it has a cool angle to it. I'll be like, "Sure, man, that's
Hmm.
cool." You know.
Of course.
Yeah,
Of
networking.
course.
All right, so
Most definitely.
come back with us. Come back with us. We'll be back with more exciting samurai tales before we wrap this series up. So, thank you and have a good night.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
And it's true that we cannot see that far behind. If we looked all the way in the past, we'd go blind. In the night, from the stars as they've all lived their lives, and the light that they gave as they burned and then died.